Cool. All right, we will go live here in a minute. And let me just see here if we are. Let's see. It'll go live in 1 second. All right. Is everyone. Let's see if we are live. Sorry about that. If we are live, let me just refresh the page here. And Andy, you can hear me, Andy?
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. All right. We'll just let this kick in here. Usually YouTube is in charge. There it goes. And I'll just so you know, Andy, I'll introduce you, and we'll let people stream in slowly here. Let's just see here. Okay, so all right, it looks like we are live. Good to see everybody, and you know how it is, everyone, with YouTube and live streaming. There's always a little bit of lag and some technical difficulties. But can everyone maybe give us a thumbs up in the chat? You're probably looking at Andy right now. Andy, wave there. Yeah, there we go. So, all right. So everyone is saying, hold on. Let me just pull up eCam here. And okay, now can everyone see me? And Andy, could you give us a test of your audio to make sure if someone could give us a thumbs up in the chat to make sure you can hear Andy as well? That'd be cool. So yeah, Andy, maybe you just introduce yourself. Awesome. Cool. Okay. All right. It looked like everyone can hear Andy, and awesome. So I'm going to do my best to monitor the chat, and then also, of course, interview Andy. And it's so good to see everyone. Before we dive into the questions, I want to give a shout out to some folks who are here. Jared is here. Awesome. Tropical Runner. Carl is here. Jake. And let's see. We have some viewers from Portugal, Andy, so that's exciting. Jackson is watching as well. Jake, Brent is here. Awesome. Good to see everybody. And again, we're just figuring out this live streaming business. It's just trial and error sometimes with technology. So good to see it. And we're going to let a few folks trickle in here. First of all, I always like to ask, where are you from? Where are you watching? Let us know in the chat on the side. Alberta, Canada is here. Let's see. Where else is everyone from? I know we've got some locals here from Colorado watching. Portugal, as I already mentioned. But yeah, let us know where you're from. And let's see. 1 second. Okay, so that's good to know. Okay, so Rhode Island is here. Chile is here. Awesome. Good to see everyone. Okay, so I'm going to... Awesome. So I'm going to pull Andy back onto the screen in 1 second, and we will get going. It's probably going to be a similar situation when I interviewed my brother. Basically, I'm going to put Andy on screen so you can see him and then hear him as well, because it seems like when I'm on screen, it's not always possible to hear me. So awesome. Western Colorado, Remington, Indiana, London. Andy, we've got a big crowd tonight, so this is good. All right, so I'm gonna pull Andy back on screen here, and we're gonna get going. Skype. Okay. Let's just see 1 second there, Andy. And there we go. Okay, so Andy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then I'm just going to get a confirmation in the chat that everyone can hear you in 1 second, and then we will dive into the questions and get going, and I'll introduce you. So good to see everyone. Awesome. Let's see. Ronan is here. So yeah, Andy, could you once again just say hello, and then we'll make sure everyone can hear you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Andy Wacker.
Yeah, nice. Andy from Boulder. It's awesome. Cool. Okay, so it looks like everyone can hear Andy. And just so you know, everybody, if you could, awesome, that's good. And you can hear me. Just let me know in the chat again if any audio cuts out, and we'll get going. Okay, sweet. All right. Well, welcome everybody. And this is Andy Wacker, my former teammate at the University of Colorado. Hard to believe it's been almost 10 years, Andy, since we were training together in Boulder, the good old days. But before we dive into the University of Colorado, I want to hear, first of all, maybe you could just introduce yourself as far as where you are originally from and, just where you grew up.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in a little town called Pinehurst, North Carolina, which
Nice.
is just a small, maybe 10,000 people town in central North Carolina.
Yeah, nice. So, shout out to everyone out on the East Coast. And now, I actually don't even know this, Andy. Did you do other sports growing up, or were you a runner from the get-go?
I was a runner from the get-go. Yeah,
Okay.
so jumped in seventh grade and started running and loved it.
Wow, seventh grade. Okay, awesome. So, everyone listening, basically, if you're just joining, Andy and I ran at the University of Colorado together, and Andy was very fast in high school. And so, Andy, let's talk about. I want to hear what was the moment when you realized, like, oh, I'm actually kind of good at this running thing. Was there a moment, whether it was middle school, high school, that you were like, man, I think I can do this running thing competitively?
Yeah, well, what really first started me, which is kind of funny, was I did this thing called probably like every U.S. Middle schooler did this. It's called the Presidential Physical Fitness Challenge.
Okay.
There's different components like pull-ups and sit-ups and that kind of thing. And one of the components is a mile race.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started doing
Nice.
that, like fifth, sixth grade, just was one of the best kids in my class. And I just knew like from that moment that I would be competitive at running, but also just that I loved it, that it was super fun to like compete and to race. So
Yeah, nice. And now, when you were transitioning to high school, where were you at with respect to training and understanding training? Did you have, did you have help from your coach, and like what was the whole dynamic between you and your coach going into high school?
oh man. So I went to a tiny private school in small town North Carolina, and I feel like looking back on it, I didn't know that much at all. So
Yeah.
I had a decent coach. I don't think he did anything wrong, but I was running not very much, which was probably good for an early age, and didn't really know like that much about why to do certain workouts or anything. It would just be like show up and do the workouts. But one little interesting tidbit is that, so I went to the small private school. We didn't have a track. We didn't have any of those kind of facilities. We also had so few people on the team that I remember doing like workouts with sprinters, like 100 and 200 meter sprinters.
Wow.
And we'd just go off like behind the school, and it was real sandy in North Carolina. And we'd do these like 100-meter sprints that were probably not even wheeled off. It was just like here to there.
That's
like,
awesome.
just back and forth. So,
That's awesome. So
yeah.
your high school coach, and I think this is the case for many, places across the country, is maybe didn't have all the experience or background that you might have maybe hoped for as for a high school coach. Oh, did I lose you there for a second?
You lost me for a second. I hear you now, though.
Okay. I was just wondering, so for your high school coach, was it basically you were learning, it sounds like you were almost learning together with him, as far as what worked and what did not work to push you to your fast PRs in high school?
Yeah, so I ended up switching schools and went to a bigger public school.
Okay.
And my coach there definitely had a lot more knowledge. He'd ran in college at a small school in Pennsylvania. And it was nice because, yeah, all of a sudden I kind of had a lot more structure, and I think a little bit more like I had better teammates and people to push me. So that was nice. It was a big bump in just the level of running that I was doing.
Yeah.
which was nice. Yeah.
And let's just put it out there right now. So, what were some of your PRs from high school?
Yeah, so the good ones were I ran 4:16 for the full mile. We had like a weird invitational.
Nice.
I ran 14:59 for the 5K
Sweet.
um, at Nike Outdoor Nationals, and let's see, 9:16 for the 3200, maybe
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very cool. Now, as you were transitioning out of high school into college, did you know that you were like, I think I want to run in college, or was it, yeah, what was that experience like as a senior in high school?
Yeah, I definitely knew probably from ninth grade that I wanted to run in college. I just knew that it was such a big passion of mine, and it was just that goal to like keep on going, keep on improving, so I can run in college.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it was definitely always on the radar.
yeah.
I was gonna
Nice. Now, everybody, I hope you heard some of those PRs. We're talking about some speed in high school. And so, Andy, I have to ask, what was a workout in high school that just like really gave you confidence for those race days to go fast? Is there a workout that jumps out at you that you remember?
Not a ton. I do remember. So before I ran 14:59, which was at the end of my high school career, which is track 5K, we did 6x1K,
Nice.
and also did 3x2K.
Okay.
Remember those being like really tough and really appropriate to get ready for a 5K. So
Yeah.
good workouts.
Do you remember the rest in between the Ks or not?
Man, I'm pretty sure they were at 3 minutes a K, and it was probably like a minute rest or something. I don't remember, but it was for the time, it was great workout. So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then what was the experience going to like how many schools did you visit, and what was it like getting recruited out of high school? What was that experience like?
Yes. I felt like I had a bit of a difficult path going between high school and college. So I did know I wanted to run in college, but I knew I liked CU because I went to a running camp there when I was in between sophomore and junior year of high school, and just loved the town, and it felt like it was the right fit. And it was just funny how oblivious I was at the time. I didn't even know like CU was a good running school, and they just won like the national cross country title.
That's awesome.
A good good to be naive.
Yeah.
But then yeah, so by the time I got to my senior year, I knew CU was definitely in the mix. I went on a recruiting visit to Iona, which is a school in New York City, which used to be one of the best running schools in the country, still does well.
Yep.
And also looked at some local schools in North Carolina, which this was back in the day when you're sending in like paper questionnaires.
Yes.
And you just had to wait for a mail response and or someone to call you, and it wasn't that smooth. I felt like a lot of North Carolina schools didn't really get back to me, and it was a lot of like kind of wait and see here and there.
Sure. Yeah, the times have changed, that is for sure. And okay, so everyone, if you're just joining, I am talking with Andy Wacker, who lives in Boulder, Colorado now, and is originally from North Carolina. And Andy runs for Nike, as you can see there on his shirt, as a pro now after college. And we're just running through his high school career a little bit and starting to talk about the recruiting moving into college. And so, what sold you on CU?
Yeah, so it's so funny just because I think as a 17, 18-year-old going out of college, you just don't know that much, and it's such a big decision for you. But I think the things that I really took away were I wanted to go to a school that I knew would be a good place no matter if I was running or not running, because I've a lot going on in my life, and I wanted to challenge myself academically and in a lot of other realms. And so I wanted it to be a school that wasn't just the perfect running school and nothing else.
Yeah.
And then also I think the size of the school really made a difference. So again, I kind of grew up in a small town, and I love competition. I love like thriving in a bigger environment. I like having other people who are better than me to pave the way. And so I thought that after going to, for example, like Iona, Iona is a very small school. I think there's only about 2,000 students.
Okay.
It just felt like it didn't make sense to me. I wanted to go to a bigger school, and CU obviously is much larger, like 35,000 students, something like that. So
sure,
that felt right. I think that felt like more comfortable to me going to a bigger school.
Nice. And before moving on from high school, one more question about so there's a lot of high schoolers that watch this channel, and so volume of training in high school. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, again, this is so funny. Back before GPS watches and all those, I think I was probably running 30 miles a week. I was not running a lot.
Yeah.
So we did some harder track workouts for sure, twice a week. You know, in the high school, you're always battling, having to do lots of meets and workouts in a short amount of time. But yeah, I think only maybe 30, and maybe at most, the biggest week in my high school career was probably 50 miles. But we're, making it up, basically writing down what we thought we ran.
Yeah. Nice. Well, now moving on to CU, what is a story that jumps out at you from some of your early days arriving at a huge school, with one of the best cross country and distance running programs in the entire country, whether it's connected to Mark Wetmore or the team as a whole? What's maybe a moment that jumps out at you?
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many stories, but one from early in my career, you just made me think of it actually, was so at CU, so many good people, and we used to do roughly 4 workouts a week. It'd be like shorter intervals on Tuesday, something longer on Friday. So like mile repeat type workout. Sunday's always the long run, and then back in the day on Wednesday we used to do a medium distance run.
Yeah.
And one thing you learn really quickly in high school, you're kind of at the top of your game. You're the best person there. But once you go to a school like CU, you're the worst person. And even if you're one of the better people at CU, you can't hit 4 workouts in a week. You're going to hit 3 max, basically, and one of them is just not going to go well.
Yeah.
But one thing that always happened to me that was funny is like, basically the worst thing that could happen to you is getting pulled from a workout, because that means you're looking really bad.
Yeah.
So we're doing those long Friday workouts. Friday was hitting me when I was kind of early in my career at CU, and so Mark Wetmore would always basically pull me off the track, and you'd be like embarrassed. You're like, oh man, like can't even finish. I must be looking really bad. He thinks there's no way I'm going to be able to finish this workout without hurting myself.
Yeah, Oh man, I've been there. That is not. That was not easy. Oh man. And just so everyone knows, again, I'm chatting with Andy Wacker, and if you have any questions, we can't answer all of them, but and we're gonna keep going. I have some more questions for Andy, but don't be afraid to ask some questions in the chat on the side, and I'll probably grab a couple questions from there. And so, Andy, is there? Let's talk about a race that really jumps out at you from CU that just, whether it was on the track or cross country, but a race that you just felt like, gosh, that I really nailed that race, or that was one of my better races from because we can't go through our entire timeline of your CU career, but yeah, what's a race that jumps out at you?
Yeah, two races basically went really well, and I feel like I was lucky and I was patient, and so I just got slowly better each year at CU, and kind of culminated when you get towards the senior year, you start actually racing well. But the first one that went really well for me was pre-nats and cross country. So we were at Terre Haute, and I ended up getting second in the race, and I was racing right by me and this guy named Lenny Career. We're neck and neck, and yeah, he was pretty good back then, and now everyone probably knows him. He runs for the American Distance Project, and he's probably one of the best American runners. So yeah, he's kicking butt. But yeah, definitely a good day when you can run with Lenny.
Yeah.
And then the second story is one, which is so I think a lot of people have this experience, but you kind of have like a lot of races that are so, and then finally you just hit it out of the park. And so I ran the 5K frequently on the track, over the years, not frequently, but a couple times a year at an invitational, and then something at like conference and regionals.
Yeah.
And at Stanford, which is a big invite, when I was a junior, I'd hit my PR basically, which is 13:41. Mm-hmm. And then I'd hit like 14 flat so many times. I think I've hit every second. I've run a 5K in every second between 14:00 and 14:10. and I've run like 14:03 3 times. And so I just hit it so many times, and it was such a big moment to come through and have like a PR where you're finally under 14, which is a huge,
Yeah.
huge mark, and then really breaking it by like 20 seconds. So it was cool.
That's awesome. And that was out at Stanford.
Yeah, that was Stanford.
Okay, cool. And what's a story that jumps out? So for everyone out there watching, Mark Wetmore is pretty infamous in the, well, obviously in Colorado, but really globally. And we were privileged to train under him. But what's a story that jumps out at you from your time, whether it's in a workout or just going to chat with Mark in his office, or maybe after a race? But do you have a story that jumps? Because I think a lot of people think of Mark Wetmore and they're like, "Gosh, I appreciate who he is, but I don't really know who he is." But maybe you have a story that can help. Yeah.
There's so many. It makes it so hard. I think one of me interacting with Mark, and one's a story that Mark told me. So the first one is basically, I think a lot of people have had this experience if you run at CU too, but Mark's just holds you to high standards, really pushes you, which is a great attribute. So basically, it was like after the hardest week that you've ever had of training. We finished our long run, 20-mile run. You're exhausted. It's just been super hard. You've had all the hard workouts. And Mark just looks at you and goes, "All right, 20 more weeks and you'll be fit."
Yeah,
keep on doing it over and over and over again, your hardest week ever, which I think is a kind of a good way to look at it. It's like, just because you've hit one hard week doesn't mean you're the great athlete. It's like you need to be consistent, and that's the bar now, So I like that story.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But sorry, one more quick one is, he'd always say the funniest things if you get him in the right mood. And so it'd be like, he'd be like eating dinner before like some race, and you're all nervous and you're just hanging out and you're kind of nervous to sit next to Mark because he's such a figure.
Right.
But I remember one time he's telling me that he's sure that he killed his college philosophy professor. So have you ever heard that one?
I don't know if I have, actually.
So he's in this philosophy class as like a freshman in college or something like that. And his professor goes, basically asking this question, if there's an ultimate truth, something that is always true.
Yeah.
And like just a second later, Mark stands up and cracks this wisecrack answer, which is, there either is or is not an ultimate truth. And apparently his like professor like went home sick, like in the middle of the class, like just a couple minutes later.
Oh no.
And he died. He never comes back.
Oh my gosh.
That was the last interaction that Mark had. So Mark thinks he killed him.
Oh my gosh. Oh boy.
Mark
Yeah.
And he blew his mind.
For everyone listening, we've got a lot of interesting stories with Mark. That is for sure. Too many to share. Oh man, it's literally endless stories. He's personally a great storyteller himself. So that's awesome. Okay, so Andy, before we move on, I do. There's a couple questions coming in. There's a couple that intersect, and it's really about workouts and getting faster. And before we move into your pro career after college, I'll just ask a couple here. It's one from John. He says, "What's the best workout to basically cut time for a 5K?" And there's Jordan also asked, "What's a good workout for the 3200?" Which are similar distances. They're different, but is there? And this is I'm wondering if these two are in high school, and obviously we don't know their background, but any tips for running faster in the 5K or
Sure. I think, I wouldn't say there's like ever a perfect workout. There's so many different ways to get at it. And I think one thing to always keep in mind is that if you're training for a race, if it's 3200 or if it's the 5K, you're basically trying to get something that's specific, that seems like it's appropriate for the distance. So I mentioned like a workout earlier that was like 6x1K for the 5K. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great workout, just because you're able to break that bigger race, the 5K, into pieces. Mm-hmm. And, they're long enough to kind of simulate what it feels like. And then hitting that pace that your goal pace for the 5K for 1K is kind of manageable. So I think something like that's a good workout.
Nice. And I'm actually going to add this from Tom here. He asked, "What was your running style in high school? Would you jump out in front or would you sit back and close at the end?" Yeah, that's from Tom.
Sure, definitely. for better or for worse, I'm one of those people who pushes really hard from the gun. So I love leading races. I like being in control, and it just seems better for me. And I think that's not always the best race strategy, but in certain ways it helps. So.
Yep. Nice. Okay, so I'll jump back in, everybody, to your questions in the chat. Keep them coming, but I want to ask another one here. So let's see. I guess let's just list your PRs from college. So you mentioned 13:41 for the 5K, right?
Yes.
And yeah.
I ran 29:10 in college for the 10K.
Nice.
And let's see, 3:48 for the 1500.
Okay. Nice. That's moving. Okay, cool. And now, and were you, so moving past college, what, did you know, like leaving college, I want to run professionally, or was it more of a wait and see, moment for you?
Yeah, I think it was wait and see. I think, again, there's always these funny things you tell yourself, and you may or may not be kind of correct in your assumptions. So I remember in college, it was such a big deal to break 14 minutes in the 5K, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And times have certainly changed. Like the U.S. is just becoming such a good country at running that even so I basically hit that when I was a junior. This was 2011. I ran that 13:41. And by the time I graduated a year later, it was like, I kind of got to understand that it wasn't a big deal. So I was kind of telling myself, okay, like if I can break 14, like that means I'm kind of good enough to compete on this like next professional stage. And I think it was kind of a wake up call that even within a year, so many people had already hit times like that I think it was not as realistic to say, oh, I'm going to get a contract or something out of college.
Sure. Sure.
So yeah, I feel like I stumbled through that answer, but I guess the answer is like, I definitely wanted to run out of college, and I didn't know if that was realistic or not. And so I was trying to set gauges to understand like where I thought I needed to be at to be able to continue doing this and see if it was worthwhile compared to, pursuing other things in life, like careers and those kind of things.
And did you have any help from anyone, like to bounce ideas off of, or were you taught, or were you kind of figuring it out on your own?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I had a couple friends, who had gone to CU and graduated and who had already done it, but I made so many mistakes. And so I think in a good way, I did a lot of things myself and made a lot of mistakes and learned from it and learned about how that post-collegiate running scene worked. So for example, I was training under Mark Wetmore still for a year post-collegiately. And I tried to get a contract. And so I tried to get an agent, and kind of through that process realized like, well, I'm not fast enough to get a contract or have an agent. It just didn't make sense.
Sure.
Because an agent's kind of someone who's going to help you if you're like the top person by kind of selling you to these shoe companies. And then Mark Wetmore is also really he's such a good coach, but he's like the worst person to help you post collegiately.
Right.
Just because he's not part of that world at all. Like he doesn't know much about road racing. He doesn't know about kind of performing at this level that's not Diamond League or that collegiate track scene. And so with him, it was pretty funny just navigating this jumping into local road races and trying to get into that kind of scene was interesting. So.
Yeah. I'll just, Andy, I'm going to jump on screen here for a second and just share my little tidbit. Basically, I'll just put it this way, like Mark is so invested in the collegiate scene and like his athletes. He wants to win at that level so bad and help really turn like young teenagers into men and women to go out into the world and to pursue their own dreams, whether it's most likely like 96% of the athletes he coaches in college are going to, they're going to go on and they're going to pursue careers. And so I just think, I think a lot of, even though he's coached many Olympians, and I'm going to bring Andy back on screen here, it's just a different, he's really it's just hard to break through his the demand on his time because he's so busy with coaching and recruiting at the collegiate level that Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's like he's in that bubble.
Yeah, totally.
So, okay, Jordan asked real quick, what did you what's let's see. He said, "How did you balance running and schoolwork during your time at the University of Colorado?" Well, how was that balance? That's from Jordan.
Yeah, I think that balance wasn't as hard for me. I think I was a really good academic student in high school and in college. I definitely made it a priority to do both. It wasn't like I was just there for athletics. It definitely is challenging because things like if you're traveling. So, for example, speaking of that great race at Stanford, I can't remember if it was that race or another time, but we went to Stanford. Stanford's in May. That's
Mm-hmm.
when final exams are for college. And so I remember taking an organic chemistry final, which was like one of the hardest classes I took as an undergrad. And
Yeah.
I finished it in about half the time so that I could make the bus to get on the plane to go to Stanford. And then at Stanford, I had to take another final, and it was like you're taking it outside at a hotel while you're trying to like concentrate, and finish your final before racing at 10 p.m. that night.
Yeah.
And so I think those challenges definitely come into play. I think it's really good to be able to time manage well, to be able to plan ahead. So, it's always a big thing is for collegiate athletes to say, I'm going to get these projects done way earlier, these papers, or study before I need to. And I'll try to take tests before I leave in order to kind of get that done and have time to focus on racing when you're there. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. And everybody listening, we're talking with Andy Wacker, and we're going to open it up to an open Q&A here in 1 minute. But first, Andy, if you could walk us through what your experience has been racing-wise, let's say in the last, 3 or 4 years, because you've been mixing it up, and I want to hear the story behind your race choices. And everyone listening, I think this is just very interesting, like the types of races you are pursuing now and how you're going about. I'll just put it in the diverse category of racing, whether it's on the roads or on the trails. Yeah, break that down for us.
Yeah, I love racing as part of it. And I've always loved running on the trails. So I think my background is definitely that more traditional track and cross country. And so I've just been able to balance all those things when I come out of the collegiate system, which has been great because I think they're just so different and they're so fun. Like road racing is incredibly competitive in the U.S. and you can do it at all levels. There's local 5Ks. Then there's the New York City Marathon. Like there's so much in between. So it's really fun to be able to get that speed. The thing that really strikes me about road racing, the fun thing is like when I was in, let's say like 7th or 8th grade, I like broke 5 minutes in the mile for the first time. And then when you're in high school, you break like 10 minutes in the 2 mile. And then in college, you run 5 minutes for 3 miles. And now I'm running like a half marathon at sub 5 minute miles, or marathon at that pace basically. And just being able to progress through those distances, like still using that speed is really fun.
Yeah.
And then, I always like having right now, basically the last 2 years I've had like seasons.
Uh-huh.
So I have like a road racing season kind of in the spring from January until June maybe. And then I'm using all that fitness and the speed that I've used to train for those road races to go into the trails, start doing more trail specific work, getting more technical, slower, harder uphills and those kind of things to go into these big trail marathons that I like to run in the summer.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll just ask right now, what is your, so how many marathons have you raced and on the roads? And maybe you could run through them and then also just share like maybe like a marathon racing tip. Maybe just run us through that.
Yeah, sure. So I've only run 2.
Okay.
I ran the Belfast City Marathon in 2015, I think.
Okay.
And that's in Northern Ireland. And that one was great because this is probably a good tip. So I signed up for that race. A lot of times you got to really plan ahead. So I think I basically committed to that race in late summer, and it's a race in May. So almost like, at least 6 to 9 months ahead of time. And in the meantime, I got just some minor injury and just wasn't able to train very well. So going into the race, I was way undertrained, and just had that kind of experience that a lot of people have, which is you feel great for about a half marathon, and then about 20 miles in or 18 miles in, you're like, whoa, I don't know if I can keep running.
Yeah.
Really hit the wall.
Yeah.
So kind of a tip with that is just well, in that case, there's so many ways to do it, but if you're in the race, just do what you can and just enjoy it. And that was still a really cool experience and a great way to jump into the marathon. And then the second one I done was Rotterdam Marathon in the Netherlands last year. And that one, totally different story, definitely prepared for it, did all my long runs, did my training correctly. And I ran 2:17.
Nice.
Really kind of flipped that one around because Belfast was much rougher.
So you have the Olympic trials qualifier.
Yep, that's correct.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. Very good. Well, all right. So here's a question in the chat from Jason. I think it's an interesting one. I'll add it here to the broadcast. So Andy, who do you look up to in the ultra running scene, and where do you find your inspiration to continue to perform at such an elite level? And again, that is from Jason.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a good question. There's so many people. I think a lot of my influences actually come from like the road scene. Someone like Aaron Braun, he's a guy who just retired. He used to be a really good road racer. In the trails, gosh, I think, there's so many incredible athletes. I just raced with Hayden Hawks. He's such a good runner, and it's so cool to see him run. Jim Walmsley is obviously just such a freak and so amazing. So he's pretty cool. And I mean, could go on and on. There's Michael Wardian. He just insane doubles and triples and running every day, like 60 miles a day in Israel, like he just did.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I look up to. So, and let me make sure I'm answering the second part of the question. Could you make sure?
So basically the second part was, how do you find, the inspiration to keep going and training at such a high level? Like, I guess after, Man,
I think no matter what, I just enjoy the process. I think it's fun to train and it's fun to race. So, every day is just new and exciting for me to be able to keep going out there. And I think we all have hard, rough days, and I think that's definitely part of the sport. It's, you're not going to feel good. There's certain days where I run 1 mile and I feel horrible, and I'm trying to truck out 5 miles for an easy day.
Yeah.
But just knowing that there's there's a bright future and time to feel good and have those great days where you just want to keep running all day.
Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting story, everybody. And I don't know the details of the story, but I think Andy's going to be able to fill us in on this. I remember hearing about it, Andy. So David asks, tell us about the Bar Trail race in 2015. What happened there? And I think David probably knows a little bit about your running background. So I'm going to bring you back on screen here. Yeah, what happened at the Bar Trail race in 2015, which is, just so everybody knows, is a race that goes up Pikes Peak, not all the way to the top, but goes up Pikes Peak. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh man. This is a great story and an embarrassing story, but I basically set my alarm incorrectly and did not wake up on time because I was planning on basically waking up super early in Boulder, driving down to Colorado Springs, warming up, and then racing. And it's about 100 miles, takes a couple hours at least, even if you drive at like 4 a.m, which I was planning on doing.
Yeah.
And I just remember waking up and it was like, if I had left exactly when I woke up, I think I would have gotten there on time. So
yeah.
I thought, maybe I'll just drive down. I said I was going to do this. A friend of mine's the race director. His name's Peter Maximo. And I said, at least I'll just go down and like volunteer at the race. Like I feel super bad, but I said I was going to be there. I'll be there. So I started driving down and I'm texting Peter. I'm super sorry, man. I'm just going to miss the race. Like I'll come and help out, do whatever, to help out. And he goes, I think you might make it. And so he's basically just telling me, oh, just come down and race.
Yeah.
And another friend of mine, Simon Gutierrez, had my number ready. So literally I jump out of the car, grab my number, and literally just start racing.
That's
Like
awesome.
of zero anything. And yeah, so I was 7 minutes late to the race start, but it's chip time, got in. And yeah, like you were saying, it's a huge race up Pikes Peak, halfway to Bar Trail, and then down. So I was just going as hard as I could and passing people on the single track on the way up. And at least at the time, was a good climber and good at going up. So made up a lot of ground. And then at some point, I was just like, man, I'm passing everyone. I'm just gonna see what I can do. And I think within like maybe a mile or two to go, I caught the guy who was winning the race. And so we're battling on this like steep downhill switchbacks. And then basically, I'd say we tied. We came to the line within like meters. But
Wow.
yeah, even on gun time, I technically, or sorry, I'm not on gun time. Yeah, if you go off of just the
yeah.
beat this guy by 7 minutes. So it was nuts.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. That's awesome. I remember hearing about that. Crazy. Well, so we're gonna open it up to open Q&A. So anything you want to ask Andy about racing at racing in North Carolina in high school, and I know we didn't get into the doing the Nike Cross Nationals. You can ask about that if you're in high school. I'd actually be curious to hear your thoughts on Nike and Foot Locker, like why you decided to go the Nike route. And I know both are great events, but yeah, let's open it up to a open Q&A for everybody in the chat, and we will try and get to as many of the questions as possible. But yeah, what was that thought process, Andy, between Foot Locker and Nike Cross Nationals?
Yeah, sorry, I missed a little bit of your question there. So, could you say that again?
Yeah, basically, the difference, why you decided to go Nike Cross Nationals in high school instead of Foot Locker, and like, because I know both are great events, and what kind of drew you to the Nike Cross?
Oh, so I didn't make it.
Oh,
so yeah,
I
didn't make either. I was the first guy out not to make Foot Locker.
Got it.
Yeah, so I was like, I think they took 10 people. They switched it my senior year from 8 to 10 people, and then I did not. I was 11th. So
yeah,
and
hey,
then
that's fair.
We were trying to make it as a team. I think that was the first year they did like a Nike team event, and it was a little different than they do it today. They didn't have the regional qualifying for the teams, and so our team also. This is a good old high school cross country story. Is we lost our state cross country meet my junior year by 1 point.
Oh no.
And yeah, super close. And that team, Chapel Hill High School, made it to Nike Cross Nationals, and we didn't.
Wow, crazy. Okay, so here's a good question from Corey. When you were at the end of your race, how do you push yourself? What are some tips on how to finish strong? So that is from Corey.
Yeah, I think training helps a lot. Definitely, if you're doing longer races, having longer runs is going to help with that. Mentally, it's always good just to stay focused. I found like little things you can find out about, like what is different when you're racing at the end of your race, and you can work on those in practice. Like maybe you could do certain repeats where you're trying to feel strong at the end of those workouts. Or if you're just losing concentration and focus, then maybe you can work on that aspect. Or if it's your cadence all of a sudden is going nowhere and you're taking 1 step per minute, then that's another thing. And so just kind of working on these cues to make sure that when you're feeling weak at the end, you can start keeping on, because it seems like just to go the same pace in a lot of races, you got to have a bigger mental effort.
Yeah. Good point. And I mentioned to everybody a couple days ago on the vlog, like I like to just kind of close it down a little bit in a long run, like the last 2 miles. Just make sure I close out a long run, not slower, but just maybe 10 seconds faster a mile, just to make sure I feel like I'm in control of the workout. So that's one little tip I would throw out there. Okay, another question, and I think this is good. Shoes. So I guess we'll go with, you could do training and racing, but like what are some of your favorite shoes to run in, both for the trail now, because Andy's in a very unique situation because he does roads and trails, but what are what are the shoes that you like to grab for, knowing obviously that you're running for Nike now?
Yeah, definitely. Recently I've been wearing the Peg Turbos for training, and they're like lightweight trainer. I think they're great. They're super bouncy, so those are nice.
Love them.
I've worn the Structures before then, which are just kind of like their Pegasus with a little bit of support. So those are, I think, are good for a lot of people. It's
Yep.
a shoe that anyone could wear. Obviously for racing, I think, everyone loves the Vaporfly 4% on roads.
Yep.
And those are just such nice shoes. Actually, a quick cool story with that is that they did a lot of the Nike 4% shoe studies here in Boulder.
Yeah.
And it's like a participant for those. And it's kind of cool just to see. I have a master's of science and just kind of a nerd in the biomechanics world of seeing how that works and getting to the point where now I'm sponsored by Nike and able to wear them. It's really cool.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, I'll just add, so I'm intrigued. I think the Wild Horse and the Terra Kiger's coming out soon, the 5s. I'm pretty excited for those. I don't know about you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I was going to say that definitely for the trails. So I usually run in the Wild Horse. I wore them today, just an easy run on a kind of flatter trail.
Yeah.
I think those are a great shoe for someone who is used to running in road shoes. Because I think they feel a bit more like road shoes in a good way. So they don't have any they're not super stiff or anything like that. They just feel like a running shoe and it feels pretty normal.
Yeah.
But have a great grip if you're going on the trails. And then, the new Kigers and the new Wild Horses are amazing. So I've been racing in those Kigers, the Kiger 5s, for over a year now, and I wear them for any distance trail race. And I think they're a really good shoe, and it's a huge difference for Nike because the Kiger 4s and before are very similar to the Wild Horse. They're kind of like a training shoe feel.
Sure.
They're not like a racing shoe feel, and I think the new Kigers have changed that, and they're really nice. They're real bouncy and kind of you have like a good ground feel, that kind of stuff. So.
Nice. And I'm just going to add real quick. You also run for Nike, but also Scratch Labs, right? And maybe you could talk about Scratch Labs real quick.
Yeah, sure. I think I've always just been a strong believer in only being sponsored by companies that I really believe in, and I would buy their product and do that kind of stuff. And I've been sponsored by Scratch for 5 years, but they're you want to call it. I think the best thing they make is the first thing, which is it's like a Gatorade powder. Basically, it's a drink mix that you mix with water to make something that's a sports drink. And they do such a good job because they really started with eliminating the junk. So it's just natural like fruit that's basically ground up to get fruit sugar, and then they put salt in it. That's basically it.
Yeah.
And this thing is your body really takes that well. So for people who are like marathoners, I'm a science guy. A big thing I think is like the absorption. Like absorption's super key. Like you're not going to get any of the calories unless you're actually absorbing them. And having kind of a really simple, natural type drink mix is a good way for your body to absorb that. You're not going to have a lot of stomach issues that you would have if you have like a high fructose corn syrup type drink.
Sure. Nice. And okay, this is a good question. Daniel asks, he noticed on Ultra Sign Up, you haven't run a 50 miler or 100 miler yet. Are you thinking ever about moving up in distance? And that again is from Daniel.
Yeah. So I'm not planning on it right now. I think maybe in the future I'll do a 50 miler.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just starting to get the hang of the trail marathon. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to understand what to do. And also personally, I think I excel better at shorter and faster trail running. So I prefer races like this year I'm doing a race called Sierra Zinal, which is a very smooth, fast, big climbing, then some fast dirt road type of trails.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer that type of racing. So I think it just suits my style better to do faster and somewhat shorter races. Sierra Zinal is about 20 miles out there.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
And this is from Go Kiwi. He asks, do you have a smoothie or recovery drink, or what do you eat after a long or hard race, a long run or a hard race? Do you have a strategy for post long run recovery?
Sure. I think I'm definitely a proponent of just eating real food. So if you can go after your long run and go have some bacon and eggs or whatever, that's great. But I also think it's good to get calories in pretty quickly. and I've gotten better at that over the years. So there's a thing, for example, like Scratch makes a really amazing protein shake that's for after running. It's basically tastes like a chocolate milkshake. So that's like a good one. And there's so many options. You could take kind of whatever you want, just like a bar or something like that is a great thing to have when you're maybe just immediately done with your run before you drive and go get something else. And
Yeah.
so big proponent of just real food, maybe some water and maybe a bar if you're got some time before you can get some food.
Nice, nice. And this is from Kenny. He asks, how do you deal with an injury close to a race? It sounds like you have a little bit of experience with this, Andy. Kenny is 2 weeks out from a marathon and just had an injury to his tendon running along his shin. Any suggestions for his best course of action? Keeping in mind, Kenny, that we're not doctors, but Andy, any tips or advice there for Kenny?
Yeah, I think it's really hard as a runner because a lot of times you do run into injuries. And I think you have to know you. And what I mean by that is like you have to know if this is going to be an injury that you really might have to pull out. I mean, a marathon's a long race. You could do a lot of damage. Or if it's something that, this race means a lot to you, you've been putting in a lot of time and you think, okay, it's kind of a minor injury. Maybe I can make it through. So like, for example, I'll give a quick personal story. I've been dealing with some minor Achilles injury. Mm-hmm. And it's just been like frustrating because I've been able to train through it sort of, and it's not getting worse. It's just one of these things that, a minor injury. And so for me personally, I've been racing on it, and it's just good to know that that it is a weakness and that you got to be careful of that. And then just a quick tip would be do whatever you can to make sure that injury is treated as much as you can before you get into the race, if that's the scenario. So for my Achilles, it's like get a PT visit in or go see a chiropractor, someone who can help kind of treat some of the symptoms, get you maybe just the injury in the best shape that you can before you race. Some people use tape, that kind of stuff. I think there's different ways around to make sure you're protecting your body as best you can if you are going to race on an injury.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so we got a few more minutes here with Andy. I want to respect Andy's time, but let's see if you have a few more questions you can ask in the chat. I'll just toss a question in here real quick from Anthony. He asks favorite places to run in North Carolina and Colorado.
Oh man. Okay. Gosh. Okay, North Carolina. Umstead Park near Raleigh. That's an amazing spot. I've had some really good runs there in the past. That's a really cool trail system that anyone can run on and do. And then Colorado, man, there's so many spots. I think I really like running in this town called Grand Lake. Seth knows all about that. It's a beautiful spot with it's outside of Rocky Mountain National Park, and it's basically all snow covered except for June and July, maybe, or July and August. So that's got to be one of the best spots. And then also this place called El Dorado State Park near Boulder, pretty amazing. So there's lots of options around here.
Nice. Okay, and so we won't wrap up quite yet, but I do want to ask Andy about the future. So what are your goals or plans for 2019? And let's just say maybe even like 2 to 3 years down the road, like what are some of your long-term goals moving forward?
Yeah, so I got a couple more road races coming up, but the big thing this year is definitely going to be I'm running what's called the Solomon Golden Trail Series.
Nice.
Which is a lot of trail athletes might be aware of this, but it's about 6 marathon length trail races all over the world. So I'm racing that, and I'd love to be in the top 10, which is kind of their criteria to make what they call the final, which is a trail race in Nepal. So I'm going to be racing in Zagama, which is a race in Spain, Mont Blanc, which is a race in Chamonix, France, and then also Sierre-Zinal, which is in Switzerland. And these are all kind of part of this series. So those are my big goals for the summer. For 2019. And then moving on, man, I definitely am looking at the Olympic trials for the marathon. So that's about a year off. It's it's either March 1st or February 29th, I think, because it's a leap year next year or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's on the radar. And then I'd love to just continue to, I always love the world championships for trail running. I think they're kind of underrated, and There's World Mountain Running Championships and a World Mountain Running Long Distance Championships that I've been a part of, the U.S. team in the past, and it's always like an extremely special thing to be on those teams and to be someone who can represent the U.S. and do well. So on my radar is always, I think one of my biggest goals in life is to try to win um, a world championship, specifically the long distance mountain running world champs. So that's on the radar.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. All right, we'll grab one more question from the chat real quick. I think it's interesting one. How do you deal with running plateaus? And I know, I guess I'll just say one quick thing on it is, you know, well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm gonna let Andy, you take it. How do you deal with like running plateaus? Let's say you're getting faster and faster, and then you hit a plateau where you just aren't seeing results where you want them to be.
Yeah, sure. That's a hard question because I think it can depend on a lot of people and where you're at. But as I said in that 5K story before, I had to run 14 flat 10 times before I ran a big PR. And another time in high school, I'd ran I think I ran 9:45 in the 3200 three times in a row before I ran a big PR there and ran 9:25. So
Okay.
I think part of it is if you're young and you're definitely a younger athlete who's still training, it's like you got to be patient. You got to know that sometimes training now won't pay off for about 6 months or a year, maybe even. So that's
Yeah.
part of the process. And then I think maybe someone who's I'm 30. If you're my age and you're hitting plateaus, I think there's always ways to mix it up and make it fun. Like change your training. If you've been doing really intense stuff, start doing more miles. If you've been doing more miles, maybe start doing more intensity.
Yeah.
What I always try to tell people, because I'm a huge fan of the trails, is if you're one of those people who's kind of burnt out, you just can't seem to run faster on certain times. Like you've run 25 marathons and your PR was 10 years ago and you're just getting frustrated. You got to enjoy the process of training and you got to enjoy the races. So move to the trails, do a trail 50K or do a race that's different for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Andy, it's been about an hour of chatting, and thank you everyone for being here. And we're going to continue to do more of these types of interviews. Andy, thank you for taking the time tonight out of I know you're a busy man with travel. Just so everyone knows, Andy I guess you were racing just last weekend, right? At Chuckanut?
Yeah.
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 Which was a 50K, is that right?
Yeah, it's a 50K in Bellingham, Washington. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Everyone who's a trail runner, they should go there. It's so good.
That's awesome. That's where you raced Hayden, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So, yeah, thank you again, Andy, for taking the time, and that was fun. And everybody, actually, let's give a shout out. If you are you on Instagram, and where can people connect with you?
Yeah, sure. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Twitter. Gosh, I'm gonna mess these up. I'm at Wacker A and at Wacker Andy. So
Yeah.
Wacker A for Instagram and Wacker Andy for Twitter.
For Twitter. Awesome. So yeah, everybody, you can go follow Andy and see his results and see his pictures from around the world where he's racing this year. So thank you again, Andy, for taking the time.
You're welcome. It's awesome.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And we will do another live stream on Wednesday. And I guess I'll just say it right now since everybody's watching. We're going to do the next running shoe giveaway on Monday, April 1st. So a week from tonight, Monday, April 1st for the next running shoe giveaway. So mark your calendars and that'll be great. All right. Good to see everybody. Signing off. Awesome.